This meeting of the Livingston City Commission is called to order. May we have roll call, please?
Chair Hoagland.
Yes.
Commissioner Short.
Present.
Commissioner Freeman.
Present.
Commissioner Murphy.
Here.
Commissioner Reed. Here.
We will now have a moment of silence. Thank you. Please rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First on our agenda, we have public comment. Individuals are reminded that public comments should be limited to items over which the city commission has supervision, control, and/or advisory power. Individual, please come on up and state your name and your address.
Hi, I'm Jackie Feigl, 166 Mona Drive. I just wanted to come up here and talk about the article that was in the Enterprise a couple days ago about the Wind Rider transportation, maybe getting some more money from the city and the county to have a route down to Gardner. We do already, through the Chamber of Commerce, have a bus that goes from Livingston to Gardner 5 days a week, twice a day. And it stops in Immigrant and it stops in Corin Springs. And that was also in the newspaper. We were looking, like through the chamber, we were looking for city and council, or city and county help with either a letter of recommendation or a letter of support so that we can get grants to have this bus. This bus costs $200 to $250 a day with the driver, the gas, the insurance, all of that. And we were told, we went to economic development, we've been told a lot of different people, we need a bus that takes us from here down to Gardner, or takes the people of Gardner back up here so they can get more groceries or shoes and clothes and all of that kind of thing. So through the Chamber of Commerce, we worked together and we made this bus. And we would like the city and the county to help us keep this bus alive, because after December 2018, Coach USA, Powder River Transportation, they will not be able to foot the bill anymore. They've been footing the bill since April of this year. And that is a lot of money each day that they're putting into our community to give us this bus, to be able to have this transportation that gets us from Livingston all the way down to Gardner, and Gardner all the way back up here to Livingston. So from the chamber, we would like a little bit more participation and help to get this bus back and forth, instead of getting another bus to do the same route back and forth. That's already doing a route in town, which is amazing. Thank you for having that. But instead of two buses doing the same thing, might as well have the one bus that's gonna have 15 to 18 people on there in January through the National Park Service to get it back and forth every day, Monday through Friday. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm here on the same topic. My name is Bill Mullenfeld. I am on the board of directors of the Livingston Chamber. And what I think Jackie did as our assistant director is sum up the issue and the problem with the transportation of bus usage from Livingston to Gardner. What I'd like to recommend is simply that the transportation committee of the city take this up as a priority issue. I know you're on that committee, and look for ways to preserve this bus service because I think over time it's going to prove even more important than it does today. So I think Jackie or myself are happy to answer any questions that you might have about that.
I'm a member of the, I'm on the board for the Wind Rider Transportation. And our goal since the inception was to be able to provide transportation down to Immigrant and Gardner and also Wilsaw. Kind of mandated we have to do that eventually. and it's a free service as well. And we're working towards that. We're not there yet. We're in the works of applying for another bus, so we will be able to do that, or at least start another route. So that's about all I can say on it right now until Jackie, did you talk to anybody on Windrider yet about this?
No,
Okay.
we just read in the newspaper and then we wanted it. This was the next scheduled meeting. so-
Oh, okay. Yeah, and that is a county board as well. That's under the office of the county, so, yeah, we should work together on that, see what we can do, and exactly where we're at. I'm not sure. I'd have to talk to Krista and Galbraith, where we're at in the application process for the other bus. And
What would be the best way for us to engage with the city in terms of working on this?
that's a good
As the
question.
Chamber of Commerce.
Good question.
And I guess I would ask first, what has the chamber, has the chamber participated in the process so far? I feel like there's maybe all these entities thinking the same way, but they haven't actually gotten
That's
together.
kind of the problem, yes.
So what has the
Well,
chamber done as far as the Windrider and in general? Anything
Well,
in-
as far as the wind rider goes,
Yeah.
we, will promote it, get everybody out there to like ride it. And then we personally, as a chamber, have not, engaged with the wind rider, except for asking for brochures so we can hand them out. But we have, Leslie, has said that she has made some phone calls to the county and to the city, to have set up a meeting between the Livingston Chamber of Commerce, the Gardner Chamber of Commerce, and the Transportation Committee and you guys, so that we can all work together and understand that this was a need and we've been working on it for a long time, just like the Windrider has. And we would like to see this flourish.
And yours is a fee-based, isn't it?
Yes,
Yeah,
it's $5 to get down to Gardner, and $5 to get back up, just so they can cover their gas.
right, yeah.
And it's not taxpayer funded
No.
right now.
Right. Yeah, and Windrider is to the point of a grant from the county and the city. It was a 2-year commitment. The rest is corporate sponsors, basically, that come up with the matching grant and stuff like that. So, yeah, I think that would be a good idea to set up a meeting with Windrider. I'm not familiar with the transportation committee. I think that has more to do with DOT and stuff like that, state issues, and not so much as far as transport itself. So,
Well, it's also a coordinating committee, and I think this is a great example of coordination of city, county, and
Right.
state.
So, yeah, I think the chamber and the meeting with Kirk County Transportation Board, whatever it is, the formal board.
The Windrider board?
Well, the formal board is Kirk County Transit Authority, basically.
From what I'm hearing of the mix of people, it sounds like that should be the lead, is the board of that has control over the Windrider and, funding, approval. And then we invite, or the board then invites the chamber and the city and
And both chambers have,
Michael.
Yeah, and the Gardner Chamber would like. to
right,
be
because
on
we
Gardner.
have city commissioners on there, we have county commissioners on that board as well, so everybody's well represented and stuff like that. So, yeah, we definitely don't want to duplicate efforts. And like I said, I'm not exactly sure when we're trying to get the Gardner thing up and running. And what our timetable is.
Who's your chair?
Eddie Bear.
So at the next scheduled meeting, can it be one potential ask for an agenda item to have a community?
Yeah, well, give me your contact information. I'll have Heidi get in touch with you when our next meeting is.
That'd be a great start. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect.
And then we can ask Michael to participate and see what information he can share about the city's role or potential. Right,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comments? Other public comment? So tonight we have 2 consent items. Do I have a motion from the commission on consent items A and B?
I move we approve consent items A and B.
Second.
We have a motion by Maybe and a second by Friedman. Roll call, please. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't ask if anyone has any that they would like to pull. So we have a motion by Friedman and second by Maybe, or vice versa. Roll call, please.
Chair Hoagland,
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz,
Four.
Commissioner Friedman,
Four.
Commissioner Maybe,
Four.
Commissioner Newton. Yes.
Motion passes. Tonight we have no proclamations. We have 2 scheduled public comments. First scheduled public comment is to introduce Energy Corps staff member Cameron Taranchi or Ranchi?
Yeah.
Ranchi?
Yeah.
To Livingston City Commission.
Howdy everyone, my name is Cameron. I just started about a month ago. I'm an Energy Corps service member, and I'm working with the city and the county to do energy audits for several buildings, and I find the savings on lighting or heating, pretty much save everyone money on lighting. So you guys will be hearing from me, getting reports on what I've worked on probably the next few months, and I'll probably come to you guys with projects and other ideas for Livingston energy related issues. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Have you noticed anything in particular that you'd like to share?
So I mean, the biggest project that I've been working on right now has been with the fairgrounds. There's just gaping holes in the amount of money that's being spent on energy there. There's literally holes in the walls of the buildings that are being heated 24/7. So I'll share a report soon once that comes out. Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, thanks.
Welcome aboard, yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you, yeah.
Great addition.
Yeah, we're glad. Shannon.
Evening. I just want to say how excited we are to have Cameron on the team. Excuse me, myself, Parks Grady, Jim Berg, Nicole Levine. We meet once a month, and we're on our second meeting. And Cameron is really hitting the ground running as far as helping the fairgrounds with energy bills, Northwestern bills for power and gas. He spent a week out at Public Works. We've flooded him with information there as well. Mike has him involved with our electric charging stations. We've introduced him to Mike DeChellis to help with that project. Some other projects, we're hoping he can help us do a lighting agreement with Northwestern Energy for all of our non-city lights around town. So that's going to be something that has not happened before that he will help us with. So just really excited to have him on board. It was a long process, but we got an excellent prospect, and we're really excited to work with him over the next 11 to 12 months and probably get him in front of the commission periodically to give you an update on his progress.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Anyone? Next on our agenda is to introduce our new.
Well, that's
Okay, that was. It was
What a
too well timed. Okay, so whenever you say fire, that thing goes off, is that what happens? Livingston Fire and Rescue Captains Lydia Junkie and Jonathan Gilbert to our city commission. Please come on up. So do you want to introduce them to us and tell us a little bit?
Yeah, that's the intent. It's my honor to present to you Lydia Junkie and Jonathan Gilbert, our two newest fire captains. Lydia was promoted to replace Captain Marlowe when he retired, and Jonathan was promoted when we had to fill a vacancy that we had for 8 or 9 months. So a little bit about Jonathan. He started his fire career in Texas in 1999. Still all that easy. He started with us in 2014, so he's just entering his 5th year with us. And he's worked in large cities. He worked in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex for a little while, and he spent some time working in East Texas. He worked in Colorado and now here in Montana. He has some pretty extensive experience in wildfires in Texas, New Mexico, Colorado, Wyoming, Idaho, and Montana. He worked as a paramedic, field paramedic.
I've worked as a fire line paramedic and an engine model.
Basically, he goes out, he works as a paramedic on wildland fires for anybody that may get hurt. Became a paramedic in 2005. He married his wife Keisha in 2001. He has 2 sons, Clayton 15 and Colton 13, 2 daughters, Molly who is 8, and in the process of adopting Willow who is 5. And Lydia is second youngest captain, in a month now, a little over a month. And she is a captain and a critical care paramedic. So she has a little extra training. She started with the city 14 years ago and was a reserve employee for about 3 years before she got hired on as a full-time firefighter paramedic. Prior to coming to work for us, she worked for Diamond B. Grain as a farmhand and a truck driver. I didn't know that until yesterday. Well, and while she was doing that, she was a volunteer firefighter and EMT with Wilsall Fire Department, which pretty much where you grew up. She graduated paramedic school in 2006 and graduated from the critical care paramedic program at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County in Maryland in 2008. So it's a pretty extensive, hard course. She's married to Clint, and they have 2 children, Leah, 6, and Ethan, who is 4 this month. And probably the best part about all of this is, as near as I can tell, she is the first female shift captain on a fire department in the state of Montana.
Well, welcome. Come on up. And welcome to our team.
Welcome.
Congratulations. Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you.
Yes.
Tonight, we have no public hearings. We have 2 ordinances. Our first ordinance is ordinance number 2075 regarding the City of Livingston, Montana Urban Renewal Plan as it relates to the Urban Renewal District by amending the Urban Renewal Plan to update the anticipated urban renewal projects. Urban renewal is what we're talking about, just in case you didn't know. And this is our second reading. And just from here, it will be a continuance of a public hearing that we actually opened and did not close at the last meeting. Just to understand government. Mr. Carter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So there are no changes from the last reading on this. It is just updating the urban renewal plan. The main points are the recommendations were to bond to continue the tax income financing for an additional 15 years, as well as we narrowed the scope a little bit to specific infrastructure for the downtown streets. Sidewalks mainly, sewer, water, curb, gutter. But nothing new from us.
So I will open this public hearing on ordinance number 2075. Is there any public comment on ordinance number 2075? This public hearing is closed. Commissioners, do you have any questions or comments on ordinance number 2075?
I just have a question. Is there any information available to the public about how money is spent in like the urban renewal money, how it's spent and allocated? Because I know a lot of, taxes and boards that often things have to be available to the public. So I wonder what the case is for this.
Sure, it is actually made available to the public on a per grant basis right now, or has been in the past. Every time money is spent from the URA, it has to come before the commission. So it's always in a public meeting. It's always voted on by the entire commission. So every amount of money that's been spent from the URA has been done so from a public meeting. Also, additionally, they can look at the annual budget and the city budget to see what's being spent per year. That's not a line item budget, but it does give them the overall amount, how much is brought in revenue, how much is scheduled to be spent. Additionally, we do have some reports if people want to dig into them on line item reports. They're not as easy to understand and they're sometimes a little confusing, but there are, no kidding, a line by line if needed, if people would request it for where the money goes specifically.
Do they just request it? If somebody wanted it, would they just request it from the board or would they need to request it from the city?
They probably would just request it from the city.
Okay. Thanks. It was just a question that I've been asked, and so I just thought I'd ask it here, so it would be public record. Okay, thanks.
Any other questions or comments from the commission? Do we have a motion from the commission on ordinance number 2075?
Make a motion to approve ordinance 2075.
Second.
We have a motion by Schwartz and a second by Friedman. Roll call, please.
Chair Hoagland,
Yes?
Commissioner Schwartz,
4.
Commissioner Freeman,
4.
Commissioner Mayhew,
4.
Commissioner Duke. 4.
Motion passes. Next on our agenda is ordinance number 2076, an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Livingston, Montana, amending ordinance 2004 as codified in Article 7 of the Livingston Municipal Code entitled Zoning Commission and Board of Adjustments, by reserving to the City Commission the authority to grant or deny variance and special exception requests and eliminating the board of the City Board of Adjustments. Mr. Curtis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this was discussed in the last meeting. This is the first official time you've seen it. Because the Board of Adjustments was in the city code, we'll take an ordinance to repeal that. So this will be the first reading. We'll have our public hearing and second reading at the next meeting, and then 30 days later, that rescinding of the Board of Adjustments would take effect. So that'll be sometime in late January, which probably means that individuals that are waiting for variance will probably, the first meeting in February, should be able to bring something to the commission itself. Now, in that intervening time, the city staff can review the current variances and provide the staff recommendations to the individuals who are asking for variances. So they'll have at least the staff recommendation. And that will also be how the new process works. If this passes this evening, when we come back for the second reading, we'll also bring you an example of how we plan to actually implement that. But the basics of it will be, people want a variance, they'll bring it to city staff. City staff will do its review, and then we will provide a recommendation back to them on whether we plan to recommend it to the commission. And then at that point, they will be able to decide if they would like to come before the commission to have a public hearing on that particular variance. So it should streamline it. We know that the commission is always here twice a month, so they should be able to get their issues in front of the commission. And we'll also give them some feedback prior to coming to the commission on what the city staff recommendation will be.
Great. So can I ask a question before we open? So if the city recommends a yes to the variance, it will come to the commission. And we will approve or, I guess, deny if the commission so chooses to do so. And then if it's a no, then the request or the requesters can then come to the commission and ask for a consideration of that no to a possible yes.
They can. They are allowed or granted by statute the right to a public hearing. So even if the staff recommends no, they can always still bring it before the commission. The reason we would provide our recommendation in advance is there is a fee involved with applying for a variance. And the new fee schedule will only be charged if they decide to continue to the commission. So before they have to spend any money on whether or not to bring the variance before the commission, they'll have the city staff recommendation. So they may choose at that point not to spend the money to bring it, knowing that the city staff has recommended against it, but it is their right if they still wish to do that.
So I will open it to the public. Public comment on ordinance number 2076. Any public comment? Commissioners, any questions or comments? Ordinance number 2076. So this is our first reading, and we will do a second reading if it passes tonight on the 18th, and then 30 days from that, it would be official.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to having this done. I've got one constituent here that's been after for since August, and there's never been a quorum or anything like that for adjustment. So, yeah, it's been incumbent upon us to take that over. Thanks.
Any other comments? So do we have a motion from the commission on ordinance number 27E6?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to pass ordinance 2076.
Second,
We have a motion by Friedman and a second by News. Roll call, please.
Chair Horsley,
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz,
Four.
Commissioner Freeman,
Four.
Commissioner Lee,
Yes.
Lady, Commissioner Lee.
yes,
This motion passes. Tonight we have one resolution. We have resolution number 4032 relating to tax increment urban renewal revenue bonds, downtown urban renewal district, series 2019, in an amount not to exceed $2,100,000, authorizing the sale and delegating to a pricing committee the authority to set the terms thereof within parameters set forth in this resolution, fixing the form of the series 2019 bonds and the security therefor. Mr. Carlos.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this resolution arises out of the change to the urban renewal plan, the recommendation to bond. We've been working with our bond council. They have been preparing the paperwork for this. What this resolution will do is create a committee that will have the authority on behalf of the commission to finalize the exact details of the bond itself. There's a conference call probably just post-Christmas that we'll set up where the bond council will finalize these details once we're closer and they can actually get numbers. So it would be our finance director, myself, and the commissioner of the commission's choosing would be on this conference call, and we would set the final numbers for the bond within the requirements that this resolution sets forth. If you want the easiest way to look at all the requirements, go to page 65. That actually gives you the certificate of pricing, and it lays out the restrictions on what the pricing committee can do. A total of 2.1 million, a maximum of 4.5%, a maturity date no later than 1 July of 2035, and a maximum amount per year in principal and interest payments of $163,000. Those requirements ensure that we can service the debt for the bond with the revenue that's currently coming in from the tax increment financing district. The total amount and the interest rate and the maturity date should all be set that day in the conference call. Once that's set, at least preliminarily, it will be brought back before the commission for final approval once the bond is set. So that covers a lot more information in there, obviously. Most of it is very vague, I would call it. So that's the crux of the issue, is to create this committee that then can finalize the details on behalf of the commission without having to have the whole commission on a conference call between Christmas and New Year.
So this is, before we open it for public comment, something that helped me to understand it. So this resolution is the tool to complete the bonding. And the ordinance above is the amendment that then we can then use this tool. Correct? Okay. So if that helps, because it's sort of complicated, the whole concept, and I know for the public, it's hard to understand, so I wanted to try to explain that. So I will open it to public comment. Anyone has public comment on resolution number 4832? All right, commissioners, any questions? Statements? Nothing? This will be back for final approval as well, this resolution,
This resolution will not, but the bond.
bond. So that would be after the 27th. So first meeting of January, if
We're all on the first meeting in January, it should be.
Okay.
Because right now it's scheduled for the first, or we move that. I think we move that on to.
Yeah, to the 8th. Yeah.
So it should be on January. We should be.
Do I have a motion from the commission on resolution number 4832?
I make a motion to, where's the number again?
4832.
Approve the resolution, number 4832.
Second.
We have a motion by Schwartz and a second by Friedman. Roll call, please.
Chair Hoagland.
Yes?
Commissioner Schwartz.
Or,
Commissioner Freeman.
Four.
Commissioner Mayne.
Four.
Commissioner.
For,
Motion passes. Tonight we have 3 action items. Our first action item is to discuss, approve, deny final plat Northtown Subdivision Phase 1. Mr. Curtis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So you saw this back in, and I can't remember the date, when we did the initial subdivision approval for the Northtown subdivision. What's before you now is the final plat approval for phase 1. That map is in your packet. If you need a bigger copy, I think we have a couple floating around here to see. But that phase is the 16 lots that are just along the western edge of the property. The purpose of tonight is to go through the conditional approvals that we had placed upon Northtown for them to get final plat approval. The planning staff has reviewed all the conditional approval and has verified that Northtown has met the requirements. The only requirement that isn't met outright is to loop the water system, and Northtown has put a letter of credit on file for that, and that work will be accomplished in the spring once it thaws out. So besides that, which we've given them an allowance to have that letter of credit on file to complete that work, all the other requirements for phase 1 have been accomplished, and it comes before you for final plat approval tonight.
Anyone who's going to speak on this other than you?
Not unless you want someone to.
Well, first we'll open it to public comment. Or, I don't know, Mr. Molenfeld, are you joining us?
Sure.
Usually you would speak on this because it's your project.
Sure. So I'm Bill Molenfeld, second time up here tonight. In this role as the developer, along with my partner Matt Ford, who is not here tonight. We're chugging along, and demand is high. The 16 lots sold immediately. There is a great demand for housing in Livingston. We look forward to starting phase 2. We've already done some preliminary work. We went with Michael Cardos and Jim Woodall a week ago and did some study of what our next moves would be along these lines. The only reason the water line's not done is because it's winter and we would have a very difficult time with traffic trying to put that in right now. But we do put up a letter of credit that's backed by the Bank of Bozeman for $175,000 to complete the work. And we look forward to your approval. I'm happy to answer any other questions you might like to have.
Commissioners, do you have any questions?
no, I don't have a question for you, but I talked to Michael earlier this week, and I just was hoping he could, just for the record, for the public, that read these documents, that see that the underpass, or the PFL crossing is mentioned, a West End underpass is mentioned. And I was hoping that you could expand a little bit on why such a specific crossing was mentioned, even though we haven't had the public meetings yet, just for clarity so that people don't misunderstand the document or the process for the crossing and how it relates to this project.
So the, that is mentioned under the conditional approval item number 1, which is actually a waiver for an SID. When you ask the developer to sign a waiver for special improvement district, you have to list the exact projects that they would be waiving a protest to an SID for. In this case, it would be the Front Street extension and an underpass project. If that happens to be an overpass project, that probably, depending on how the state feels about it, would probably also qualify. But you have to list it specifically. So we couldn't just say crossing, we had to be more specific than that. From looking at the pre-engineering on this, the most likely answer is an underpass. And while that decision hasn't been made, that gave us the best chance to have the proper language in this document if we needed to use the clause of the SID waiver.
Thank you.
So I guess off that, so explain the SID waiver.
Sure. So in general, there's a protest period or ability to protest a special improvement district by the property owners. As part of the conditions of the actual development, there's a waiver to that protest period. So if there's a special improvement district for the items that we list in the approval, then there is no, for that property, there is no right of a protest on the special improvement district. And that's just to ensure that we can put in needed improvements for the subdivision as we go down the road.
Explanation. Any other questions? I actually have one, Bill. I know it's not a requirement for, and it wasn't stated in the staff report, but you have talked about, and I have actually walked with you in that area and talked about trails.
Right.
And a trail somehow incorporated in the plan is, I know it's not in this plan, and this is just the initial section. But do you have any feedback on that?
Sure. I think our plan right now, if you look at the plan itself, the 16 lots we're talking about tonight are on the far left side of that plan. And right in the middle is a open space section. That'll be our first trail system, and we're planning on doing that along with phase 2 this spring.
So the trail will go through the center of the.
Yes, approximately, yes. And we're working with the Trails Committee too.
That's where I went up there with you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And just for the record, there is a requirement for improvement of the scenic trail in phase 2. So that's actually listed.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
How did this start? Where is that?
Page 84, number 11.
84 number 11.
Fine. Any other questions? So
I have a
go ahead. One.
two-part. First of all, I'm guessing that the impact fees are being revised, and I'm curious as to what kind of a schedule that's on.
So the impact fees study, the impact fees will not change until the study is complete. Right now that we are doing we have received the proposals or the statements of qualification from several of the bidders. We're in the middle of picking that. There'll be a negotiation period where we negotiate with whoever we pick as most qualified. Once that's done, then they will start the actual rewrite process. The impact fees themselves cannot be changed until that entire rewrite process is completed. Hopefully in the July, August timeframe. Impact fees are paid, correct me if I'm wrong on this one, when the building permits are pulled, correct? So if building permits are pulled prior to that completion and that change, they'll pay the current fee structure. If those building permits are pulled after that update is completed, they'll pay the new fee structure.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
If I could follow up on that, when do we expect to have the study completed? By next August?
Hopefully by, yeah, July, August.
July, August, okay. That's. Okay.
You're gonna update us on it tonight, won't you? A little bit on the impact fees.
We could talk a little bit about the, well, I kind of just did. That was what I was
Yeah,
going to tell you.
okay.
Yeah.
It is, that's the
That's what I
same.
thought.
We had several very good submittals, so there's several firms that will have to pick one. We'll hopefully accomplish that by the end of this week or early next week.
So do we have a motion from the commission on action item A to approve the final plat, Northtown subdivision phase 1?
I'll make a motion to approve the final plat, North End.
That would be pleased to second that.
We have a motion by Maybe and a second by Schwartz. Roll call, please.
Chair Hoagland,
Yes?
Commissioner Schwartz,
Or,
Commissioner Freeman,
Four.
Commissioner Maybe,
For,
Commissioner Haight.
Yes.
Motion passes. Next on our agenda is to discuss, approve, deny chairperson's assignment of city commissioners to advisory boards and committees. Mr. Carlos.
thank you, Madam Chair. So this is a little off cycle because we have had to appoint a new commissioner. This usually would be what you do in the January meetings, but since we were close enough to having to resign anyway, we decided we could do it all at once. And these board assignments will take place tonight, and they will be effective for the rest of this month as well as the following year. So this will cover all of 2019 as well. On page 87, you have a list of current boards that commissioners are on. The staff and I went through this and we looked at what was actually necessary and actually effective to have a commissioner on, and we thought we could cut it down from the current number of 12 down to 5 key boards. The rest of the boards, such as the airport board or the health board, you already have significant staff representation on those boards, and we can certainly report back to you on them. They probably don't need a commissioner to sit on them themselves. While you would certainly be welcome to still sit in on any one of those boards individually, if you wanted to have a specific item you wanted to hear or just see how it was going on or just to touch base, you're still more than welcome to do that. But we cut it down to what I thought were 5 key boards: the city planning board, the city tree board, the library board, the parks and trail board, and the urban renewal agency. So on page 87, you'll also see the times that those boards meet and the current commissioner members of those boards. So what's before you tonight is to decide if you're willing to limit it to those 5 boards, and if you are, who would like to sit on each one?
So let's start with commission discussion on this, since it is commissioners, and then we'll open it to public. Commissioners, do we have any feedback or comments first? Anyone? Clinton?
for the record, I was on the 911 communication board with Warren. Did you pick that up? It's a very interesting board. I don't understand what words you're saying. So I'm glad, I just looked over this. It makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
So you're saying 911,
Yeah, I've been on that community, on that board too.
could a staff member, when
Absolutely.
important issues come up, directly to us, just bring it to the commission?
Yeah.
Easily?
Absolutely.
So,
I certainly haven't brought anything back since I've been on that board.
so I guess, I almost feel like we need to go through each board to make sure that everyone is comfortable with, potentially taking the representative off from the commission. And we don't have to discuss every single detail of it, but at least to be comfortable. Would you agree? So obviously our planning board is required, isn't it? So, we don't really have a choice. But I think it's a very important position for a commissioner to be on that board. And then the city tree board. Comfortable with that continuing?
You're on that, so.
Yeah, you're on.
I'm on the tree board, but there's other assignments I've never been on. For instance, transportation and library. I've not been assigned those things.
And I think Sarah Sandberg was on library, but then she could never make the meetings, and then I think her name was sort of
Thrown in there.
thrown on
You
it.
didn't know.
So, so city tree board will continue, is that what we're saying?
Yeah, I can tell you.
And then the airport board, do you have any feedback on that for us as far as the importance?
Or I
of-
can.
Or, yeah.
As well, if I, finally started attending it. There's a lot of changes afoot up there, with, future development and, an extra FBO coming in, a fixed base of operations. I'm learning how to go up there. But there again, Michael's at all those meetings. I don't see a need for it. I will sit in occasionally because I think it's really cool what's happening up there and stuff like that. There's a lot of potential for both the city and county, the changes that are being planned. So that's my,
But he can bring us the
oh,
information.
absolutely, yeah.
About the city health board. Warren, that's yours?
Yeah, a lot of what goes on there is variances. Or not really what you would call medical related. It's more,
Sanitary?
yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of common sense rules, or not common sense, but also what the ordinances are. I'm sure they can get along without me.
So the city and the county staff that is related to the issues can
Right.
make
Right,
sound decisions that they bring
Oh, yeah.
us if it.
yes.
Historical Preservation Commission?
Very, and their, bylaws or whatever, city commissioners have a lot of down board. I don't know why it's on there.
That's easy. There. All right. Library board.
Yeah, I was never assigned that. I don't know, Melissa, do you have an assignment yet?
I don't have an assignment, but I would not want to be
You
in
wouldn't
the
want to be in the
library.
library.
I think that would be a bad choice.
You would want to be in the library,
Yeah, I
you
think,
just would not.
I
be
love the
appropriate.
library and I think, yeah, it's probably a very wonderful board, but I am not the person.
Looking at changes, I would like to, personally, I would like to be on that board.
On the library?
Something new and different.
So I
Unless
guess we'll
somebody wants to
decide
arm
about,
wrestle for it.
so let's decide after we
After we do,
make
yeah.
sure
I'm
we're
just- yeah,
comfortable
I'm
with the
just- yeah.
boards as to is everyone comfortable which board they're on?
Okay.
Yes. Okay. Parks and Trails, that's mine. I've been on for 5 years. I think there is an advantage to a commissioner being on that committee in that the information that we share back and forth really is important. Anything from me asking Mike something that they're asking or wondering about to me bringing something to Mike and or the commission. Because it is something that has to be funded. It is funded through doesn't have its own budget, but it is funded through maintenance and various things like that through the general fund. So I do think someone should stay on that board for some time, for some. Sister City Committee, I know that was sort of a,
Numbers balance.
yeah, Mel, you were on that, but I think it was also honorary and they wanted the city to be involved in it. What's your sense on having to have a commissioner on it?
I think it's worth it. Yeah.
How can,
That's the one I did this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
how
yeah,
does the commission, what's the role of the commissioner on that board? Just,
I think with Sister City, it's just, it's a matter for the city as a whole to recognize that they exist, because it's a really fantastic program. So that's where I tried to help with, just to make them known, yeah. that the-
So,
that kind of-
you did a good job with that because I know a lot about it because of you, so.
Yeah, but, yeah, and, it's fantastic thing for the kids, I mean, that's a good talk too. And I know Donna really well, so we work well together.
And I think that is a perfect one where if commissioners wanted to attend occasionally, that would be great. But I think and I hope I'm right as far as the sister city committee goes, I think what they would really like is for the commissioners to be more involved while our guests are here.
Right.
Yeah.
So not the year-long commitment where you have to show up for all the meetings, but more, I think, involvement when
And
the
that's what I did.
the visiting, the party is here. So I don't think it's a matter of being on the board so much as being a participant with our visitors when they're here. And, going to the welcome parties and the send-off parties and, those kind of things and the tours. So I think if we cut back on the involvement through most of the year, but up the involvement a little bit more when the visitors are actually here, I think they would be happy with that.
And someone from the committee can just come before the commission and request.
Yeah. Which we usually get their calendar and the request and you know.
And I've gone to a couple of one of the meetings, and we get a tour every year as well.
Yeah.
So they come through the city county building, usually when they go see the fire department. So we get the fire department and show them around the building. So there's always interaction. So we'll be well aware of what the schedule is.
And try to get the press more involved too. And sister city, get more pictures.
Skatepark board is dissolving, sort of.
It's a slow motion dissolving. It's just gonna take a while to get their charitable foundation in place. But there's really not a lot of decisions to be made right now on the skate park itself. So,
Stuff are running.
and I think it'll slowly evolve to the same kind of model as LYSA or the baseball association or the tennis association, where it's more, we'll put a maintenance agreement into place and then they'll be mainly self-sufficient.
Although I have to say that I know James was involved in the skate park board for years, and it was great to have that level of support coming to us as well. So,
Well,
for,
at that time, there was a need.
yeah,
Really.
and for future projects, it's
Yeah.
something to think about because it was definitely a plus for both their board and I think for the commission and the city to be involved together. Next one is the Transportation Coordination Committee. Feedback? I know
That
nothing.
basically just has to deal with MBT and stuff like that, right?
It is, it's very in the weeds as far as projects go. So it's the
Yeah.
county, it's the city, it's the Montana Department of Transportation as well as the Federal Highway Administration. And commissioners are certainly welcome to come to those meetings quarterly. But that's where we go through the list of priorities. They tell us their list of projects.
Right.
We talk about which streets should get chip sealed and what projects are working on for
Yeah.
trails.
Transportation is kind of a misnomer, saying it doesn't have anything to do with actual,
Yeah.
bus service or whatever, yeah. So,
So again, the experts or the staff.
And I attend those,
Absolutely.
Shannon's at all those. So we have plenty of city representation.
I went to one of those and I just want to say that it was fascinating and like super interesting, I thought. But I think that, Shannon was totally on top of the city needs. And my hope would be is when there's a topic that comes up that is, when it starts to get related to funding and like we're competing with other communities to help fund the projects that are priorities for us. If there's something that the commission can do to help support that, so that the staff isn't doing it just by themselves, that they could come back. So let us know if there's something that we can do.
Melissa,
Yeah.
I just have a feeling that those watching at home cannot hear you.
Thanks, Joe.
We'll hear about it tomorrow. Because they will tell us. They always tell us they can't hear us. Or you might want to pull yours closer to. Like if you decide to speak.
Should it become necessary.
Yes. The last one, so the Urban Renewal Agency. You were on before?
Mhm.
And you want to give us feedback on that?
Yeah, with the construction projects going on, stuff like that, it's nice to have a commission around that, at least for the time being. Work is still ongoing. I enjoyed my time on there.
We have a lot coming up.
Yeah.
Related to it. Is it required as well?
I don't think it's actually required.
If you're not voting, member of the board,
So, okay, you're thinking yes on that, then.
yeah, I think there's need to keep a commissioner on there.
So on the planning board, you're a voting member for the planning board, but not for the Board of Adjustments.
Not for the zoning. commission.
Zoning commission, sorry, wrong word. Okay, and then,
You're not even a member of the zoning commission.
so it's 5 votes,
And so-
and then on the zoning and 7 on the planning board. You're not a voting member. You're just a rep. And then, are there any other of those boards that they're not voting members?
I'm unsure about the library board, but I think they're voting on the library board.
I know
So too, I think that all 3 of these are voting.
911 communications board, that was voting. But eliminating that.
Board of Health is.
Okay.
voting.
Airport board, no.
Skatepark, yes.
So so we agreed that most of these can go away, except for the 5. We agreed on that, and then, have the city representatives filling in and bringing that information to the commission. Now, as far as a plan as to who wants to be on which board, is there any discussion or opinions that you would like to share with each of us? If you like a certain one for a certain reason, or would recommend someone else, or that you want off of one and would prefer another?
Does Melissa, do you have an assignment, Melissa?
No, I don't, and I obviously do not, I've already discussed the library board. It's not
Oh, no, it is.
consideration for that, but,
Well, I'd like to be on the library board, so.
I think that it might be helpful, I'm on the planning board. And, if you're on the planning board, you should get a good introduction to what's happening in different parts of the city. I would like to be on the URA board.
Yeah, I think you'd be a good addition to that, especially with having a vested interest as well. And you understand what's going on. Being a property owner in that. I don't think there's council with that
I'm not
or anything, but
pushing.
no, I'd be happy to be on the planning board.
So that leaves me for the parks. No one's fighting me for it. Mhm.
not yet.
Do we have a chance if we fight you for the
No.
parks interest?
We don't.
I would say we're just deferring to your experience.
Yeah.
Well, and one cool thing that I realized is that 3 of us have been on, or 3 will have been on the planning board in the future, which I think is a really important thing. Because I was on for 4 years, and Warren's been on for a year, and then Melissa's going in, and I think that is very important because it's one of the biggest issues that we deal with,
Yeah.
really, as a commission and as a city. So,
We revisit these yearly, annually anyway, so.
I
At some
think it's
point, I
really-
might like to take a spin on that, but.
We've
not
talked
right
about
now.
it before.
Yeah.
So.
But I think Melissa would be awesome on it.
So I guess I'll just repeat, if I wrote it down correctly. So we'll have the city planning board with Newts and the city tree board with Friedman, the library board with Schwartz, parks and trails with Hoagland, and urban renewal URA with Maybe.
Sound good?
So do I have a motion from the commission, to accept that statement, I guess, on the, assignments
Changes and
and,
assignments.
yep, assignments and changes to the, what do you call it? Our city boards and advisory board.
I'll make a motion to approve the changes to our city boards and the commissioners as stated.
Second. Second.
So we have a motion by Schwartz and a second by Friedman. Roll call, please.
Chair Edelman,
Yes?
Commissioner Schwartz,
Four.
Commissioner Friedman,
Four.
Commissioner Mayhew,
Yes.
Commissioner Lee.
Yes.
Motion passes.
So before you move on, I actually have a recommendation that'll feed into the next action item. One of the things we talk about in these board assignments is that they have a lot of good information. And the 5 we picked, I think, are very specific in that they have a lot of good information. I think it might be useful if we change our agenda so that there actually is a board report section where the commissioners who have attended a board meeting since the last commission meeting can just give a quick summary of what's going on in that board, to kind of inform the whole commission and just raise the level of knowledge for everybody on what they're doing in that particular board. And you don't have to get into topics, and we don't have to discuss the topics. It would be more just of an overview of actions that are happening that may come in front of the commission, just so that there's a higher level of knowledge of what's going on in the whole board.
I think
That's a good idea. We've never done that before either.
Could we, I like it. Could we also just say more of a general statement of commission and committee updates? So that if there's something from staff that we need to know, that we could use, have that update at that time?
Sure, I would probably just put it under board and committee updates, and then if there's an item, I'll highlight which boards have met since the last meeting. And that way the commissioners will know if you have to report out on the board you went to, and if there's a staff report, we'll do it at the same time.
Yeah,
Great,
that makes sense.
great.
That's good.
It keeps us accountable because you're on the board. Hey,
I
you
also,
really go, yeah.
I also know that the Parks and Trails started, I think, 2 years ago, so they've reported 2 times out yearly. They're one of the committees that will come to us and they did a slideshow, they talked about the improvements that the Parks and Trails have been working on along with the city staff and some of the things, volunteers. So I don't know, would we need that type of kind of presentation? I think they do a great job, but would it be overkill, I guess, for them to have to come with a planned presentation?
I think that can certainly be done at least like once a year. I think that would be good for everybody just to hear
An overview.
The
of what's
boards?
going on, yeah.
perspective on how things are going. I think that would be useful, especially in boards where a commissioner isn't sitting. That might be, if not all the boards or committees would make sense, but like the Transportation Coordination Committee, that's not really a board that would report out. The airport board, again, is probably not one that would report out. Could, but it's probably more likely I would do a staff report on that. But certainly ones like the Sister City Committee and the Skatepark Board, Parks and Trails, the Tree Board, could come and just report out on actions and items and priorities that they have.
Yeah, and same with the library. Just, capital
Correct.
improvements and whatever.
Sure. Maybe get a little more, the library could state their case a little more.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you think we could then have you send them an email reminder or an ask to have updates?
What we can do is just come up with an annual schedule and say, hey, this second meeting in August is the library board. That's when we present. We just have an annual schedule so they're not all bunched at one time.
Yeah.
And it would just be the same every year, and all the committees would know that, hey, this is when we come and report out to the commission. We could set up a schedule like that, get it out to the boards and committees. And go from there.
And I would say remind them
Sure, absolutely.
as well, because you give them it once and committees change and it go away.
But the schedule will help us remember to remind.
Right. Exactly. Okay, great. So last action item is to discuss, approve, deny changing the start time of the 2019 City Commission meetings to 5:30 PM instead of 6:30 PM. So this has to be done by ordinance, but we can discuss to have it brought to us as an ordinance change or amendment coming up if
So it'd
we
be
so
an agenda
choose.
item, yeah.
So feedback. Thoughts?
Four?
Or
Four.
didn't vote yet.
No, I'm just, that's my opinion.
Anyone have a reason for your four? To explain to the public as to why a 5:30 start time would be better.
Well, as the agenda stacks up, and it will at times, meetings do go past our allotted time. Quite often since I've been on the board, and I'd rather just, take it till 10:30 instead of 11:30, although we haven't had to do that yet, so. 9:30.
Especially during the winter hours.
Yeah, and I've run out of gas by that time. Still got a little in the tank if I,
Yeah.
oh no.
Well, we have a limit with, is it in the policy, refresh me if it's within the
2 hours.
ordinance, the 3-hour
3 hours,
meeting? And then we have to make a motion to extend the meeting. I don't recall us doing that this year. But it has in the past.
I think that was then 2 weeks.
Yeah, we did.
Oh, two, okay. Remembering which one, or which ones. So I think one question we do have to ask and or make a statement on is the 5:30 start time hard on people working? So is that a good time for people coming off of work to come directly to the meeting? Or potentially missing it if they get off of work at 6 or 6:30. Some people do work till about 6. Do you think that's an impact that,
Not only because public comments perhaps are in the beginning, but people complain that they're at the end because it got too late, so. I don't know, can't please everybody, we want to accommodate as many people as possible. Yeah. It's quite a month, and it's, if somebody really needs to be at the meeting, they can make accommodations that they have to work till 6:30. I need this time to really come work for us, I don't know.
anyone else? Have any
Well,
ideas?
I thought we had some pretty important topics tonight, and you can see the public attendance, which is kind of, I wouldn't say average, usually there's a few people.
Well, it's December too.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be an item of large concern for too many people unless they've got a.
Right, if they want to, need to be here, want to be here, they are here, so.
Right.
I've never heard any comments one way or the other, so.
But we'll have 2 readings on
I'm
that
sure
anyway,
once
right?
I'm sure once we do something, we'll hear about it.
For an ordinance,
Oh, yeah.
and then 3 days, so when people will have a chance to weigh in after that.
So make sure it goes in the paper that we're discussing it in an
Yeah.
ordinance for
I mean,
for a vote. Right now, if we move it to
Yeah.
an ordinance.
So we have discussed this a little bit as far as the time change and its effect on the public. Most of the feedback I get is that it's easier earlier. As it gets later in the night, especially parents with younger children need to get home to either feed them or get them to bed or whatever. So I think a 5:30 change would actually help the people that have difficulty getting there currently. I know the move of the public comment to the beginning of the meeting was well received. People appreciated that a lot. So especially if all you have is a public comment, this will allow, parents to come in right after work, sit down, get their, state what they want to state to the commission and get home in time for supper possible. So I think in general, this will help people who want to participate in the process, which is one of the goals you gave me in the strategic plan. So that's what we're working off of. And so I think in general, it would be helpful. There probably are a few people that it will be harder for, but I think the majority of people would be helped by this time change rather than.
And how about staff?
I'm sure the staff would love to stay
Yeah, that's. kind of
and go directly to a meeting instead of going home and coming back.
Yeah.
Well, and one of the things, or the last thing, I guess, is policies can be altered easier than ordinances. So what we can do is sort of adjust your ordinance to reflect just some basics on how meetings, including open meetings, blah, blah, blah. That's what the ordinance would read, just how our
Yeah.
meetings look. But then the policies can change easier without 2 readings, without, that level.
Yeah,
So-
that's a long conversation.
Yeah. So we can then change, do you want to discuss policy?
Sure, so the way I would propose to implement this is really to remove most of the specifics about the meetings from the ordinance itself. Again, as the chairman said, we would leave things like what's quorum, what kind of motions you can make, what kind of rules we use. Those are all ordinance type things. But then we would create a commission policy guide that would cover these things. What time do the meetings start? What order of the agenda? Where people sit? I mean, our ordinance is specific right now. Technically, our public comment should be at a table because it says people will come up and sit at the table. I mean, it's that specific. So if we took those things out of the ordinance and went instead with a policy, then if we found out that people are upset by 5:30 meeting time, it would take 1 meeting to change it back to
Change it
6:30
That makes
instead of 2 meetings in a 30-day waiting period.
makes a lot more sense.
It will give you more flexibility in how you change the meeting around to try and figure out what's the best for people and what's the best for the commission.
So, do you mind if I make the motion tonight on this, just because I wrote it
Yes,
down?
yeah.
Okay. So, I make a motion to direct the city manager to update the ordinance to reflect the changes, along with a rewrite of the policies, or to add information with the policies.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Hoagland and a second by Schwartz. Roll call, please.
Chair Bovet,
Yes?
Commissioner Schwartz,
4,
Commissioner Freeman,
4.
Commissioner Maybe,
4.
Commissioner Nick, 4.
Motion passes. Sorry, I didn't open it to public comment, but Jonathan, you're our only public. So, okay, sorry. I didn't know if you wanted to say something. City manager comments.
All right, so I just have a couple updates for you tonight. One was going to be on the impact fee study. Obviously, that is ongoing. We're making progress, and that'll come shortly. We're still working on the growth policy. In general, as for timing goes, we're still working on the funding, but we would want the impact fee study to be completed before we started the growth policy, because the impact fee study would then actually be one of the founding documents that would go into the growth policy. It would help drive it, actually help reduce costs, because that's something that the firm wouldn't have to figure out on their own. We've already paid a different firm to do it, so then that would be. But we're still moving forward with the growth policy as well. Working on at least the funding aspects of it. The other big thing coming up for the commission is probably the return of the strategic plan. The staff has held eight full day offsites on the strategic plan so far to fill in the strategies and actions that should implement the mission, vision, values, and goals that the commission set when we did the strategic planning initiative. It's going to be a hefty document, and it should be fairly specific with measurable goals that you can approve. I will try and get that out to you before Christmas. We're probably going to want some time to go over it, and then I'm guessing you as a commission are going to want to set a special meeting to go over nothing but the strategic plan. And then once we get that approved, that really will cover all the strategic items for the next 3 to 5 years. It's fairly aggressive, I would say. It is utilizing pretty much all the staff capacity and financial resources we have. How things shake out of that will determine how that gets adjusted over the years. But if everything in there gets accomplished, it will be a very significant slate of both staff time and financial resources that we're going to accomplish. So that's coming. Be ready for that. It will be an exciting and interesting meeting.
City commission comments. Melissa.
Yeah, I wanted to I'm hoping, I got this draft from Michael of the gateway tax option. It's something that we've been talking about, ways to help the city gain revenue from tourists. And so I wondered if we could put it as an action item to discuss this. Like all the commissioners get a draft copy and see if there's something we might do, like potentially write a letter of support as a commission for state legislators or other decision makers that we might want to share this with. If our community supports it as a game, if we decided that we supported it.
Right.
I read it and I think it's actually really interesting. And so I'd like to hear what you all think without giving away too many details, except for Michael's coffee budget is in here, so that's interesting. He generously did like a sample, used himself as an example citizen, getting into the weeds a little bit. But I think that would be fantastic if we could put this on the agenda. And
You have a timeline that you have it on?
well, it sounds like there's a lot happening. I wonder how soon we could get it on the agenda, because it sounds like we're gonna get busy. Well, we're always gonna be busy, but if there's big things coming up in January, I don't wanna wait too long. If this is something that we can talk about sooner, or if you have a suggestion.
And when do they seat the next legislature?
I think they're already set.
Oh,
Well, at least the committees, I think, have been signed.
okay.
This will probably, to be effective, we'll probably have to have something by January, because they'll start.
Oh, yeah, time.
Yeah, because they'll start the session. If we're looking for, I think, a couple options would be either a letter of endorsement from the city commission, or even a joint letter of endorsement from the city and the county commission. I can draft both of those prior to the next meeting if you want, and we can bring those to the next meeting and look over both the bill and the letters of endorsement or recommendation. And I'll talk to the county so that they know that we're working on that. It really was their initiative, so I don't think that will be a.
I mean, Bill kind of ran
Yeah.
that,
He has done a lot of work on that, and I think he's continuing. So we've met with most of the local contingent of state legislatures. We'll continue to do that, but I think a letter of support or endorsement from the commission would make a big difference, especially our legislators and the legislators, and probably the rest of the legislators as well.
Okay, so put it, I'll second, or your request to put it on the next agenda.
Yeah.
And since it sounds like you need
For the
to
18th.
timeline.
And the big work is already done, so.
right.
we'll
Just
send that out.
basically looking it over.
I know we're limited on what we can do as a city, but this is a topic that keeps coming up.
Right,
In our
absolutely.
meetings, so this is something that, a way we can support and
Endorse it.
yeah, not just to tell legislators, but also other communities and other commissions across the state that, maybe they would be more interested in supporting it when they see other communities supporting it and hearing our reasoning. And then in the spirit of the holidays, I need to be thankful. I continue to be amazed by city staff that maybe don't feel recognized for the work that they do. Paige keeps coming back to me and like how she saved us all 30% on our water bills. The behind the scenes work I think is really impressive. And so thanks to all the people, all of the great city staff that don't get thanks, that affect our lives in positive ways every single day, and we might not even know it. Yeah, thank you.
Well, you never know things are being done well, when you hear about them, they're not being done well. So I think that in and of itself is, pretty well proved positive.
Speaks volumes, yeah.
Nothing else.
There's a calendar of events here on the page, and I'd like to make a public announcement that Quentin and I are both in a community choir, and we're given performance this Sunday at 3 o'clock at Holbrook Church. And it's a great program, and there's also refreshments after we finish. But I think you would enjoy it. We've been associated with the community choir for quite a few years. And I think you'll enjoy the program. So that's it.
And I'll add to that, it's one of the oldest community choirs in the state, going back to 1889 or something like that. And hasn't always been in existence, but it has been for quite some time. And yeah, Mel and I are singing a duet. He doesn't know it yet.
No.
Just kidding.
Like right now?
Yeah. Yeah, acapella, right? No, I don't think so. That's all I have. It's usually a well-attended concert, and it's fun. Thank you.
Bring the kids.
Yeah, bring the kids. They love it.
I just want to thank Faith and Mike for our calendar in here. I'm always asking for calendars to be improved on, and I think I just like that there's the whole month in front of you, and it really helps, even though you might not attend everything. Although I will attend National Cat Herders Day, I'm just gonna say. And
And my wife's chair of that.
yeah.
Pre-K.
And then also just the Parks and Trails was canceled because it's the day after Christmas, so that's canceled, even though it's in there, but perfect that it's in there to state. I do appreciate, this, in particular, this calendar, I think it's great. As far as, I'm trying to think of other things.
Or the stroll.
Oh, the stroll's coming up? And now, I know we voted to have open container, I think, at the last meeting for 2 hours, or whatever, the 3-hour time period. Next meeting, there should be a group from one of our classes at the middle school that will request or will present a item to the commission. And that should be fun. I'm kind of forcing them to come to us to show them what government looks like. But then they have to leave because they have a concert at 7 o'clock. So we'll make sure they get in before everything else.
Yeah, it makes so many get to it too.
Exactly. All right, other than that, I have nothing else. So do I have a motion to the commission for adjournment?
These old dudes.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? This meeting of the Livingston City Commission is adjourned at 8:55. I mean, 7:55.